Dry spell no more in Macau, at least for now. In part 4 of our week-long series leading up to the territory's handover to China this weekend, Andrew Stevens checks into Macau's hotel industry.
Macau is getting ready for the hordes. This week, thousands of diplomats and dignitaries, journalists and onlookers will descend on this tiny enclave. They'll be coming from near and far to watch the last European colony in Asia return to China. With some 6,000 visitors expected and just 9,000 hotel rooms available, Macau hoteliers have good reason to smile.
Since we do not have an inventory of hotels like Hong Kong, automatically the whole town will be buzzing during this period.
Macau needs a bit of a buzz. Over the past 5 years, the number of hotel rooms in the city has grown some 18%, but the number of tourists has slumped, particularly after Asia's financial crisis gripped the region and a gangland war erupted on the streets of the enclave. For the past 3 years, hotel occupancy rates have hovered at less than 60%, and room rates are just a fraction of what they were. Macau hoteliers may be making money, but it's been tough going.
Ever since the Asian crisis or downturn in mid-97, it's been very tough for us because Macau very much follows what happens in Hong Kong. Not only that, but we have been overshadowed by the triad activities, which have given us a very negative publicity.
But that doesn't mean it's easy to find a hotel room in Macau for handover weekend. 4 of the best hotels have been completely locked up by the government. For others, there are still rooms available, but you'd better hurry.
There are basically 4 hotels, which are so-called official hotels. It's the Mandarin Macau, the Hyatt, the Westin, and the Ritz, I understand. There are many other hotels which are not fully booked up. I think the solution needs to come for a day trip. I think that would do it.
One thing you won't find much of in Macau is the type of price gouging that typified Hong Kong's handover 2 years ago. At that time, some Hong Kong hotels doubled their prices and required handover partygoers to stay a minimum 5 nights. In Macau, by contrast, average room rates on handover night are less than a third above regular weekend rates. So get 'em while they last. Andrew Stevens, CNN Financial News, Macau.
Back now to the overnight market action on Wall Street. We're joined by Ash Reagan, Vice President at Prudential Securities in New York. All right, good evening, Ash. How you doing out there?
Farland, fine, thank you.
Okay. Well, last time we spoke, you said that Microsoft was undervalued at 92. Now it's jumped up to 108. You think it's still undervalued?
I truly believe so, Farland, because here is the 600-pound gorilla that got weighed in at about 50 or 100 pounds in this last couple of weeks, languished and sort of lagged the entire technology move. So it's its turn in the sun, if you will, as we see the moves, the rally go up in Microsoft.
What's the main fundamental reason you're seeing this as being undervalued?
Well, first of all, most people tend to believe that Microsoft has sort of lost its leadership in the technology arena, given the fact that the entire technology domain is moving away from the personal computer and into e-commerce and the internet, and they feel that Microsoft simply hasn't re-established itself in the new space. While that may be somewhat true, but Microsoft is not sleeping at the switch by any chance. It's reinstating itself and reinforcing itself, making acquisitions and certainly making new product introductions in that area. So given all of that, it's not getting the credit it deserves. Besides, it's got this Justice Department cloud hanging over it, and that's the reason the stock has been cheap.
Yeah, we recently did an Asia Rising story about Microsoft and a number of internet e-commerce ventures out here in Asia. Any other tech stocks you see as being undervalued?
Well, you know, we talked about Oracle briefly last time. However, that's another stock that's up 12, 13 points today. Once again, it dominates the space in the e-commerce environment as well as in your traditional software environment, namely enterprise software and database software. And then you go beyond that into something truly more aggressive, right into the heart of e-commerce and business-to-business commerce. You come across companies like New Era of Networks. Sounds like a mouthful. Symbol is NEON. Certainly Broad Vision, BVSN. But these stocks are expensive. They're not cheap. And that's the reason we like these names.
Briefly, what's ahead for the market? More volatility with Y2K in the way?
Farland, you couldn't have said it better, only because we still think, because of the Y2K, not so much a concern, but a certain reservation, if you will. Volume is going to be diminishing towards the end of the year. And when you see diminished volume, you'll see a lot of volatility, both overreactions on the upside and on the downside. And that's probably what's going to happen to all these names in the next few days.
Ash Reagan, Prudential Securities. Always good to hear from you, Ash. Thank you.
Farland, thank you.
AT&T reshuffles its e-commerce deck in Asia. That story is heading your way in our Digital Jam Minute. Back in a moment.
Caltex.
Past the 18th century Japanese screen there on the right and step inside the office of a billionaire CEO who runs his Silicon Valley company like a samurai. It's an austere, sleek office with few clues to the owner's business, but his passions are clear. From sea captains to captains of the galaxy. On the desk, Captain Kirk's phaser gun. Better not point it at this green ceramic bowl. It dates back to around 200 BC. And this horse goes back to about 700 AD. These 17th century hand-painted Japanese screens describe an epic samurai naval battle. The man who works here is fighting a different kind of war, trying to win back the total marketplace dominance his software company enjoyed in the 80s. Stay tuned, and we'll tell you where we are. So who is the executive who collects ancient art and Star Trek toys? It's Larry Ellison, the founder and CEO of Oracle Corporation, the world's largest database software company. He also has some neat things that don't quite fit into an office, like his 78-foot, $3 million yacht and 4 personal planes.
Israel, Syria, and the pursuit of peace. I'm Jonathan Mann. On the next Insight, the highest level talks ever between these arch foes are underway. They're trying to secure a deal that looked all but dead until recently. We'll look at the key issues on Insight, only on CNN.
CNN will usher in the new year live from every time zone on the planet with 60 of its top correspondents bringing you the global celebrations. Millennium 2000, 100 hours of non-stop coverage on CNN.
Shows here now with a look at world headlines. Karuna?
Well, Farland, the battle in Chechnya has taken a fierce turn as Russian troops attempt to storm the Chechen capital, Grozny. The Associated Press is right the same region later today. And Farland, I'll be back in 15 minutes, and we'll be talking to John King from the White House about those talks between Syria and Israel.
Thank you very much, Karuna. On today's Digital Jam Minute, AT&T sells its Hong Kong internet arm, and a European telecom merger hits rough waters. Steve Young has the details.
The merger of the two Nordic companies would be Scandinavia's largest ever. For more tech news around the clock, check out the technology area of the CNN FN website. I'm Steve Young, and that's the Digital Jam Minute. Now here's a look at some Asian tech stocks that trade in New York.
Out with the old and in with the new. After the break, we'll talk to First Capital ABN AMRO's head of research about General Parvez Musharraf's plans to jumpstart Pakistan's economy.
Security and
Deloitte Consulting is proud to be associated with this program. Deloitte Consulting, a very different approach for very different results.
Fly into the new millennium. Vietnam Airlines, bringing culture to the skies.
On a special month of CNN's Larry King Live, We'll have a millennium's worth of guests throughout December. Larry's next special guest is actor Jim Carrey. It's a millennium month of guests all December on CNN's Larry King Live.
Pakistan is cleaning up its act. The country's military leader, General Parvez Musharraf, promises to bring its underground economy above the fold. Musharraf also says he plans to impose a general sales tax that's in line with demands made by the International Monetary Fund. The Karachi Stock Exchange gained 15 points, or 1% yesterday. For more on Pakistan's outlook, I'm joined on the line by Arshad Arif, head of research for First Capital ABN AMRO. Good morning, Mr. Arif. Thanks very much for coming on the show. Now, General Musharraf announced his plan to bring Pakistan's sick economy back to life, try to make it more self-reliant. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate the speech?
I guess it's 5.
About a 5?
About a 5? Yeah.
How impressed or disappointed were you?
I think I'm a bit disappointed, mainly because of the reason that land reforms, which is the biggest problem in the agricultural sector in Pakistan, seems to be missed on the reform agenda. Secondly, the military government seems to be establishing a parallel infrastructure, mainly from the military authorities, in addition to civil government. So that would mean there will be no reduction in the government expenditure.
How about on the upside? What did you hear that you liked?
Yeah, I think for the first time we have seen a nationalist theme any government in Pakistan for, say, last 12-15 years. Secondly, again, it's the first time that government has indicated that it will go for further relief in the external debt regimes. Thirdly, the government has also announced a 200 basis points reduction in interest rates. And lastly, there has been more focus on the regulatory infrastructure rather than announcing specific incentives for different industries.
How do you think the International Monetary Fund is going to react? The IMF had suspended its $1.6 billion loan program because of Alaska's failure to implement reforms.
I think definitely they will listen to this properly, but again, they have their own conditionalities, and it depends how the conditionalities would be implemented by the new government.
And what about the demand that Pakistan has had over the past 2 years for these internationally backed power producers to slash their prices? Any chance that there's going to be any change in that?
I think as far as independent power producers are concerned, I believe the problem lies with the poor financial health of the power distribution utilities in Pakistan. Without resolving their financial problems, I don't foresee an amicable resolution of the independent power producers. But I believe, as the General Parvez Musharraf has indicated in his speech, that government will do something over the next 30 days to resolve this issue.
Okay. Arshad Arif, head of research for First Capital ABN AMRO, coming in with a mixed review on General's speech. Thank you for that. Up next, in our Entrepreneurs Only feature, we meet two businessmen with some big, if a little crazy, ideas. Stay with us for that.
One small step for man.
High roads of the future.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
If I have to put something into the time capsule, I have to think about who I want to see it, say, in 100 years' time. And it's interesting to think what people of the future might think of it.
The mobile phone, definitely. Because, I mean, it's such a fashion accessory right now.
To maybe ridicule our generation, I'd probably put Hello Kitty as a sign of sort of, I think, everything that's bad in this decade.
Probably my teeth, I guess. Because they're not going to last that long any other way.
The G.I. Joe action figure, he's my first actor.
I
I'd stick in Oriental Sunday. That's a Hong Kong gossip magazine. I'd stick in Private Eye from UK. I think gossip magazines very much capture the of a society better than the serious news operations. So a batch of gossip magazines I'd put in.
I think I would put my first film in it. That's very important to me. It's close to my heart. And I hope that would be left for posterity.
Education and justice.
Global equality.
A world that cares.
End of corruption.
Keep watching for more Voices of the Millennium from Nokia.
Human rights. How many of them do you take for granted?
Making a fortune out of playing around. In our weekly Entrepreneurs Only feature, a look into the wacky world of the Idea Factory. Lauren Terry reports.
They're what your grandmother used to call a couple of Weisenheimers. Lance Kushner and Glenn Rudin run the New York-based Idea Factory, a creative playground where toys are born.
We like to think that we've turned attention deficit disorder into a cottage industry, to tell you the truth.
Their most notorious product line, the Meanies, a Beanie Baby parody featuring Splat, the roadkill cat, Boris, the Mucosaurus, and the Codfather.
Everything out there was really cute and cuddly. There was nothing out there that was edgy and gnarly and gross. And so we did some focus groups, and we found out that the favorite words for little kids were barf, hurl, and puke. So we felt like we were onto something.
It all began when the two were employed by a large toy maker that just didn't seem to appreciate their genius.
We constantly come out with the greatest new idea for a new toy, and we, phoned it into the corporate office, and they were like, that's great, now, next.
Then the circus came to town. In 1996, while still employed, the two were approached by the parent of Ringling Brothers, Feld Entertainment. To drop in the $21 billion toy bucket, the partners know they've got a niche. They're nimble, and they're very close to their market. Lauren Terry, CNN Financial News.
The recap of the markets up next. January 1st marks the dawn of a new era for mainland Chinese workers. China's Xinhua news agency says it will start processing applications for mainlanders to work in Hong Kong. Employees can apply to take spouses and children under 21 with them. Now a quick recap of overnight market action. Microsoft jumped 10%, leading Wall Street higher. The Dow Industrials gained 65 points. The tech-heavy Nasdaq jumped 50 points. The S&P added 10. Now to CNN This Morning in Karuna.
Thanks, Farland. This half hour, historical arch enemies come together for Washington talks with high hopes but low expectations. And a powerful cyclone lashes Australia's western coast. A live update is just minutes away. CNN This Morning continues now. Good morning. I'm Karuna Shinsho.
Top market news on Asia Business Morning. Farland.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everybody. In this half hour of Asia Business Morning, on Wall Street, the Dow drifts to a lower close while the red-hot NASDAQ fails to hit another record. Daewoo still in a fix. The sale of Daewoo's electronics unit to a U.S. investment firm is in jeopardy. We'll have that story. And seeking gold in the Chinese internet market. We'll tell you about one man's bid to create China's very own Yahoo. Asia Business Morning is next. Good morning and welcome to Asia Business Morning. I'm Farland Chang. It's a down day for Wall Street, but the NASDAQ closes just shy of its 50th record for the year. Tony Guida wraps up the market action from New York.
Seems to be a headline these days when the NASDAQ doesn't set a record. Investors went bargain shopping for technology shares that have been overlooked in the recent run-up, but they steered clear of the broader market. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 38 points. It closed at 11,002%. In a press conference on Wednesday, U.S. President Bill Clinton said he will make an all-out effort to get the U.S. Congress to agree to China's entry into the World Trade Organization. Mr. Clinton said the deal would be a huge economic benefit to the United States and would protect the U.S. from China's so-called dumping of cheap products. As far as China's labor standards go, Mr. Clinton said he didn't agree with them. But he added, China shouldn't be held to different rules than other WTO members. That's a look at business news from New York. I'm Tony Guida.
Now for a deeper look into Wall Street's overnight action, with stocks ending lower, I'm joined by Dan Ament, the investment officer with Dane Rauscher in Minneapolis. Welcome back, Dan. Now, do you expect more profit-taking, or will the year-end rally resume?
Well, I think the bottom line here is we're still in the midst of some consolidation after this phenomenal run-up in NASDAQ. We've got that FOMC meeting coming up in December, and I believe we're going to see some profit-taking in anticipation of that.
With the volatility of tech stocks like Yahoo and others, what are your words of caution to investors right now?
Well, I think primarily investors have to be very cautious when selecting individual equities. Try to build a diversified portfolio and avoid having concentrated position in some of these more volatile names like Yahoo, which is up over 67% since they announced it's in addition to the S&P 500 just 5 days ago.
You say that we're in for some consolidation ahead. Where do you see the value in the market now?
Well, I think there's been a number of economic sectors which have contributed, or I should say sacrificed, market cap to this technology sector. In particular, the financial, retail, and healthcare sectors are showing considerable value relative to these more high-tech names.
Some investors are taking profits in case of any surprises ahead of that Federal Reserve meeting you mentioned on December the 21st. Are you expecting any surprises?
I don't. I think it's fairly, at this stage, it's moot point. Fed will not act in December, although it could offer some words of caution as considered or more concerns about the labor market persist. More realistically, if we see any action by the Fed, it would be in the first week of February.
Any interesting developments that stood out in the marketplace as far as the wireless industry or e-commerce?
Yeah, good point, Farland. I think two in particular. We had one announced today between Microsoft and Ericsson showing the addition or availability of online access, both email and internet content through wireless phones. Another between Sprint and Amazon, offering consumers the opportunity to shop the internet via their handheld devices. So we're continuing to see a proliferation of wireless handheld devices accessing this content or data.
And, of course, interest in that sector is driving up the market still. Thanks very much, Dan Ament, investment officer with Dane Rauscher. And this just in, Korea's finance ministry says the economy could grow nearly 10% this year. This is the most bullish forecast to date made by the Korean government. Still, Korean markets are not likely to cheer just yet. Daewoo's debt troubles are still casting a dark cloud over markets. It seems Daewoo Electronics is getting the brush off from its white knight. According to Hanvet Bank, the main creditor for Daewoo Electronics, a plan to sell the firm to U.S. investment firm Walid Alamar is off. The negotiating deadline for the agreement expires today. The sale was expected to bring in $3.2 billion US. Hanvet Bank says it wants to sell the unit after its debt workout program is complete because it will be worth more. Yesterday, shares in Seoul fell more than 1% as investors overseas bailed out. Concern about Daewoo's problems dominated the market. A surge in the won also tempted investors to cash in their profits. The won rose to a two-year high of 11.24 to the dollar Wednesday, and it's currently trading unchanged. Tokyo's month-long rally is taking a breather. The Nikkei average fell 1% yesterday as investors cashed in gains on telecom and high-tech shares. Meanwhile, the yen is still range-bound, hovering at around the 102.84 to the dollar. On the corporate front, Tokyo prosecutors have indicted the London headquarters of Credit Suisse Financial Products, part of the Credit Suisse Group. It's part of criminal proceedings against the financial products unit and former employees amidst allegations of irregular business practices. Authorities also indicted the former head of the financial products unit in Tokyo. They say he helped to hinder an investigation by Japanese regulators. The Credit Suisse Group criticized the move, saying it saw no reason for the London office to be indicted. In Malaysia, investors are sidelined by bank merger uncertainties. The Kuala Lumpur Composite Index closing marginally lower Wednesday. Especially hard hit RHB Capital, which fell 4.7% to 3.24 ringgit. The shares tumbled after a dispute between key shareholders of its parent, Rashid Hussain. RHB Group shares also fell 3.6%. Shareholders are split over a plan to merge RHB Capital's banking unit, RHB Bank, with 4 other institutions. The spat highlights pitfalls facing dozens of financial institutions in Malaysia. They're scrambling to meet a January 21st deadline for submitting merger plans to the central bank. For more on Malaysia, I'm joined on the line by Sani Hamid, the Senior Emerging Markets Analyst for Standard & Poor's MMS. Good morning, Sani. Thanks for checking in from Singapore. What's going on behind the scenes at Malaysia's third largest bank, RHB? Why is there a split over a plan to merge with other banks?
No surprises there. I think as the merger process carries along, we'll see some individuals getting their holdings diluted, and that will cause some problems further down the road. It's probably not only the first, we'll see some more further down the road.
Is this raising new questions about that controversial plan to consolidate these banks?
I think it was to be expected because right now banks are asked to merge themselves. In the end, what I think will happen is Bank Negara will have to come in and provide guidelines and also lead the market in merger process.
Daim Zainuddin had pushed for the bank merger plan and was reportedly upset with the Prime Minister for his flip-flop. He's seen as being very pro-business. Will he stay on in the Prime Minister's new cabinet?
The market doesn't think so. He's given hints that he will leave, and most very likely will be Tengku Razali to take his position. With the new change, do you expect big changes in economic policies, and are investors going to be approving? I don't think investors will be that worried. I think Daim will stay back as the National Economic Action Council chairman, so that's a positive point. If there's a succession worry, it's not the finance minister's post, it's the prime minister's post in the future.
Daim was also the architect of Malaysia's capital controls. Do you expect any changes in that or the fixed exchange rate?
So far, there are no signals fundamentally or economically that suggest there should be. Politically, I don't think so, as long as Mahathir is there.
We just heard about Fitch IBCA upgrading Malaysia's long-term currency ratings. What's your overall assessment of Malaysia's fundamentals?
Very good. The past two figures, Q3 GDP and in October industrial production, has not been that encouraging. It may not be a permanent thing, so we have to see in a few months ahead. If it continues, I think then we'll start to have to reassess the situation.
And Tengku Razali, if he does indeed take over, what changes do you think we're going to see, if any?
I doubt there will be many changes. The whole capital control system itself is working well, so I don't think they'll tinker with it. Tengku Razali, mind you, has been the finance minister previously. He has the experience, and I think market will accept that.
Sani Hamid, Senior Analyst, Standard & Poor's, appreciate your assessment. Now, for other markets in the region, Taiwan stocks may be in for a shaky ride today. After markets closed yesterday, Taiwan's Vice President Lian Qian urged the military to bolster its missile forces. He made the call in response to reports that China is massing missiles just across the Taiwan Strait. Gains in the Taiwan stock market fizzled out Wednesday. Investors paired their blue chip holdings in favor of internet plays. The Taiwan dollar ended 8 straight days of advances, ending unchanged at 31.45 to the dollar as the central bank intervened to cap its gains. Hong Kong stocks were also lower, down 0.5% on profit-taking. That despite a rally in property stocks. But Singapore stocks continue to race ahead, gaining over 2% on strong demand for blue chips to end at another record high. Up next on Asia Business Morning, Japan's telecom leader NTT has plans to get more Japanese online using their telephones. First, a look at how the dollar is trading in Asia at this hour.
That's Insight here on CNN.
It's the biggest story of the year, the century, the millennium. And who better to cover it than CNN? With 60 of its top correspondents in key locations around the world, CNN will usher in the new year live from every time zone on the planet, bringing you the global celebration.
These talks. Middle East peace talks tops our world headlines. Michelle Hans here with that.
Thanks, Farland. United States Secretary of State Madeleine Albright says the mood is positive in the Middle East for a resumption of peace talks between Israel and...
NTT is opening up doors to the internet, and it's going to fire up some rivalry among internet service providers. Patricia Sabga has more on the story in our Digital Jam Minute.
Japanese internet service providers expect a new deal that could put more Japanese consumers online. And that's the Digital Jam Minute. Now here's a look at some Asian tech stocks that trade in New York.
They make quite a pair. Ericsson and Microsoft form an alliance. Stay tuned for that story and more right after this.
LG Electronics.
Haven't we met before?
LG.
Your health. CNN provides the breaking news and information you need. CNN's medical experts report on cutting-edge advances in treatment and prevention from around the world. Dr. Steve Salvatore looks at global health issues from nutrition and exercise to parenting and adding years to your life. Plus, log on to the most complete medical site on the web, CNN.com and WebMD. Make your health a priority, only on CNN.
200,000 Europeans killed each...
On Stockwatch today, we have a tie-up between two Singapore and Taiwanese tech firms. Nat Steel Electronics is forming a joint venture with Taiwan's Acton Technology. That could generate $1 billion in revenues over the next 3 years. Nat Steel's CEO says the alliance could lead to equity swaps. And in Hong Kong, further signs of economic recovery. Wheelock posts a $58 million profit for the first half to September 30th. The investment group says much of the 31% gain was due to the rebound in the economy. Wheelock has investments in property, retails, hotels, and manufacturing. And things are looking brighter for South Korea's Samsung Electronics. The world's largest memory chip maker raises its 1999 net profit forecast to well over $263 million. Microsoft and Ericsson are teaming up to develop mobile internet services. Ericsson insists the deal will not affect its Symbian project, which uses a competing operating system to Windows. Diana Muriel takes a look at what the deal means for the mobile internet service industry.
Microsoft teaming up with the competition to make sure it gets a foothold in the mobile internet access business. Mobile phone maker Ericsson and Microsoft will develop a web browser and email devices for mobile handsets. But Ericsson says it also remains committed to its Symbian joint venture, which uses Psion's operating system Epoch, not Microsoft Windows CE. Analysts say the Ericsson-Microsoft deal doesn't threaten Epoch's dominance.
Microsoft have lost the battle to get their operating system on these phones, but they cannot turn their back on a market of 600 million phones. So what they are trying to ensure is that Microsoft content and Microsoft applications, in particular email, this type of thing, can still be accessed via those phones.
Microsoft has been slow to move into the mobile internet business, but the size of this potentially multi-billion-dollar market is not one it can afford to ignore. Still, it may be 3 years before new products from the partnership have a positive impact on earnings. And in the meantime, other relationships could develop. Diana Muriel, CNN Financial News, London.
Coming up, he has blazed a trail in China's internet industry. Now he's out to fire up China's tech revolution. That's next on Asia Business Morning.
We're in the business of bringing people's ideas to life. We'll work with you, wherever you are. Because we understand that imagination sets no limits. As your needs change, so will our solutions. And because you never stop looking to the future, neither will we. ABN AMRO Bank.
Recently on Style with Elsa Clinch.
Now our Thursday Entrepreneurs Only feature. We look at a man who is catapulting China into the digital age. Born in China but bred in the U.S., Beijing's prodigal son is creating a stir as the next big thing heading for the NASDAQ. Leanne Peck reports.
Sohu.com, China's most popular website with an average of 2.3 million page hits a day. No mean feat in a country where technology is still viewed with suspicion and the internet just a new toy. Meet Charles Zhang, China's version of the Silicon Valley entrepreneur who brought the U.S. tech revolution to Beijing and beyond.
If it is great in the U.S., it must happen sometime in the future in China. So maybe I want to start a new company and to do it early so that when it's really coming, then we'll be the first mover. And then the next few years, they followed exactly as I predicted.
That prediction first came to Zhang while he was pursuing a doctorate in physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology 5 years ago. Enter the likes of influential friends such as MIT tech guru Nicholas Negroponte. With their help, Zhang set up his company Internet Technologies China, and the Yahoo-like Sohu was born. But getting a foot in the Chinese tech door wasn't easy.
I had a laptop with me in Beijing, and people don't know what you can do with that. I have to explain. I have to, it's kind of, do my pitch. This is going to be the future. Do it, okay? Help us. We will do it.
Those early days are long past. Zhang says the company broke even in its first year with revenue from advertisers like Motorola and Ericsson. Now it's also powered partly by money from Intel and Dow Jones. And investors are growing impatient for its NASDAQ listing. Critics say the company is just another search engine riding the wave of .com hype. But Zhang is confident Sohu has what it takes to beat rivals like China.com, NASDAQ's only Chinese internet success to date.
We've been very focused in China. So we want to make sure a market that has highest growth rate of users are locked up to Sohu, and which is happening.
With China's 1.2 million net users this year expected to quadruple to 5 million by next year, it's little surprise being the website of choice is becoming big business. Leanne Peck, CNN Financial News, Hong Kong.
A recap of the markets up next.
Where's the center of the tech world?
Tokyo?
I don't think so.
Yeah, center is best described by use of the Fourier vortex theory.
Let me get back to you.
Whoa, not here!
Tech world? Anyone?
Looking for the center of the tech world?
I think I found it.
Maybe it's where the most highly respected, highly successful tech companies are found. The New York Stock Exchange.
Think the Fed's gonna raise interest rates?
CNN's Insight.
Here's a recap now of the overnight market action. Wall Street was led lower by a sell-off in tech stocks. The Dow declined 38 points to 11,068. The tech-heavy NASDAQ entered unfamiliar territory by falling a fraction of a point. The S&P down 3 points. I'll have more in 15 minutes. Now to Michelle and CNN.
Still resting just to the east of the area, but that, as you can see, on approach to Vietnam. Elsewhere across Asia, we do have precipitation.
Thanks, Lila. Now over to Farland Chang with Asia Business Morning.
Thank you, Michelle, and good morning, everybody. Tokyo stocks are lower. Wall Street slipping. The Dow falls 38 points. The NASDAQ snapping a winning streak. The clock winds down on the proposed sale of Daewoo Electronics to a U.S. investor. And in Hong Kong, a property company goes high-tech to attract buyers. Asia Business Morning is next. Hello and welcome to Asia Business Morning this Thursday. I'm Farland Chang. Let's start it off in Tokyo, where trading kicked off a few moments ago. Currently, the Nikkei average down 39 points at 18,361. How about listening to tunes on your cell phone? Sanyo Electronics says it is teaming up with Hitachi and Fujitsu to distribute music over mobile phones. The service is scheduled to start next year. Sanyo shares are up 5 yen this morning, Hitachi down 15 yen, and Fujitsu up 20. The yen has been in somewhat of a holding pattern against the U.S. dollar ahead of the Bank of Japan's quarterly Tankan survey due out on Monday. Just a few minutes ago, the yen was trading at 102.95 to the dollar. Officials representing South Korea's biggest exporters are scheduled to meet with the Commerce Minister today. They are expected to discuss Korea's rampant currency, the won. It's at a 2-year high on the dollar. Exporters fear that too strong a won will take a bite out of their bottom lines. Yesterday, the won finished at 11.24 to the greenback. In Asian trade this morning, it is at 11.24 against the dollar. And the proposed $3.2 billion sale of Daewoo Electronics to U.S.-based Walid Alamar has hit a snag. Hanvit Bank is Daewoo Electronics' main creditor. It wants to sell the electronics firm for more money. Hanvit wants to sell it at auction after the debt workout program is completed a year from now. Today is the deadline for the deal to go through. Daewoo Electronics shares fell 1.5% yesterday. They slid 45 won a few moments ago. As for the Kospi, it's now down 7 points at 981. On Wall Street, the NASDAQ Composite finishes just shy of its 50th record of the year, and the Dow dips as well. From New York, Tony Guida tells us about the market downturn.
Seems to be a headline these days when the NASDAQ doesn't set a record. Investors went bargain. That's a look at business news from New York. I'm Tony Guida.
In Singapore, the Straits Times Index makes a run for its 4th consecutive record close. Yesterday, it shattered record number 3 by charging 51 points higher at 2351. That was a gain of 2.25%. For the year, the STI is up 65%. Thailand's banks, are slowly reducing their bad debts. The Bank of Thailand says total non-performing loans are down for the 5th straight month. Bad loans average nearly 44% of total bank assets at the end of October, compared with nearly 45% a month earlier. For a closer look, I'm joined on the line by Maris Tarab, head of Thailand research for KGI Securities One. Good morning, Mr. Tarab.
Good morning.
How impressed are you with the amount of this latest reduction in bad loans?
Not so for this year, for debt restructuring for the country.
Why are you not that impressed?
Because the number dropped from, let's say, 47% of the peak in mid of this year to just only about 44%. It's a bit slow to me. But the number that dropped from 45 to 44% in October, it's partly because of the new regulation that allow the NPL to become the performing loans after the contract signed between the debtor and creditors. Partly. Okay.
Well, the Bank of Thailand, though, says that the financial institutions are generally making progress in restructuring their bad loans. What do you see as driving that?
Actually, the recovery in the economy and also the new regulation that announced by the government And if you look at the number of the debt in restructuring in October, it accounts for around 86% of total NPL in the country, compared to just only 60% in June.
If right now the bad loans are averaging nearly 44% of total bank assets, what's the goal? What do you think is an acceptable level?
I think 30-25%. It should be better than this year, which we expect that the number of NPL could drop to 30% to 25% end of next year.
By the end of next year, any roadblocks that could derail this restructuring of the loans?
Yes, I think the major problem is should be on the different view between creditors and debtor. For example, the case of TPI, which is about 6% of NPL in the country, so it can derail the success of the debt restructuring.
Very, very briefly, to what extent are the banks lending money out?
This year, if you look at the credit extension, it's for up to 10 months. The growth is average at around 1.4%, and we expect the lending could grow next year by 7%.
All right, Maris Terab, we're going to have to leave it there, but I appreciate your outlook. Head of Thailand Research, KGI Securities. A sign of the times in our weekly Asia Week feature, the changing face of Hong Kong's cable and wireless HKT. Stay with us for that. On Stockwatch, the economic recovery is giving Hong Kong stocks some zip. Investment conglomerate Wheelock posts a 31% profit gain for the 6 months to September 30th. Net earnings were $58 million. That meets expectations. But Wheelock shares were down 0.5% in Wednesday trade. Looking for an apartment in Hong Kong? Well, soon you can do it online. Sun Hung K Properties is teaming up with 5 top real estate agencies to launch PropertyStreet.com. You can visit show flats and get listings online. SHK shares rose 0.75% Wednesday. Competition in the telecom sector is stronger than ever, and one company feeling the strain is Hong Kong's cable and wireless HKT. In our Asia Week magazine segment, we check out what the company is doing to stay ahead of the pack. Lorraine Han has the details.
Cable and wireless HKT is facing some tough times. Its latest $356 million loss surprised the markets and proved that competition in the telecom sector is heating up. This stays back. CNN Financial News, Hong Kong.
Recapping the markets, the Nikkei down 51, the Kospi down 9, and Australian employment numbers should be out any minute now. We'll be back in 15 minutes with the details. Stay with us for Asian Edition next.
Where's the center of the tech world?
This week, the art club is totally devoted to women. Rachel Whiteread, a respected British artist, whose work is all about casting the empty spaces of everyday objects.
With 60 of its top correspondents bringing you the
983. The Korean composite down 0.4% over the past 45 minutes of trade. But shares could get a boost from comments from the finance ministry. It expressed concern about the strong yen and said it will act to curb its rise. The won traded at a 2-year high yesterday. A short while ago, it was weaker at 11.31 to the greenback. A top loser this morning is Daewoo Electronics. Its stock has fallen since the open. Investors are disappointed by news that its planned sale to U.S. investment firm Walid Alamar seems to be off. The deadline for the deal expires today. The sale was expected to bring in $3.2 billion. Daewoo's main creditor, Hanvit Bank, says it wants to sell the unit after its debt workout program is complete because it'll be worth more. Meanwhile, the Daewoo Group has started fresh negotiations with its overseas creditors. They will discuss how much of a loss the creditors will have to take on their Daewoo debt, which totals about $5.1 billion. Employment figures are just out in Australia. They show the lowest monthly unemployment rate since June of 1990. The unemployment rate plunged to 6.7% in November. That compares to a rate of 7.1% in October. Full-time employment rose by 2,600 jobs, but the overall number of employed persons was down by 6,200. A Reuters survey had expected a gain of 15,000 jobs. Well, to assess that number, I'm joined on the line from Sydney by Stephen Halmerick, co-head of Economic and Market Analysis for Solomon Smith Barney, Australia. Good morning, Stephen. Now, we seem to have a mixed bag here. The unemployment rate has declined quite dramatically, but the number of employed people fell. What's the bottom line?
Well, I think the bottom line is that this number confirms the ongoing strength in the labour market. As you said, the unemployment rate at 6.7% is nearly at a decade low. Although the number of people employed on the month did decline, the monthly survey does jump around